Naira again.
Yeah.
Now we offer access service business model to our customer. But for customer, last time one or two corporate customer come to me, to us, and ask us the new business model. I want to pay you based on the revenue that I get, not what I consume, what infrastructure that I consume. I want to know from you guys, do you have any experience on that, and especially for service, the impact to this billing system and the business process. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. This is actually one of the points that I touched upon. Pay as you go is the model in cloud. There is no other way, whether it's enterprise class or SME class, whatever it is. Even when it comes to enterprise, within enterprise, all the users become the SME part of it. So there is a clear-cut complexity built in, and you need to make sure that meter each and every piece of usage being done by the users, and then consolidate finally all the usage, and then prepare a bill.
The question is how measure the revenue of our customer. That's it. Because they want to pay us based on their revenue growth.
So this is a pretty newer combination that you are talking about. But okay, pay as you go is nothing but when I am using more, that means my objective is met as an end customer. So I am making more revenue so that I can pay back to a telco or a cloud provider more. So it's tightly coupled or nicely fabricated thing. So pay as you go is the only model, and there is no revenue sharing as such I could actually come across. Though I work with a telco getting into cloud, or regular data center guys setting up a cloud model. There is no model where customer says, I'll share my revenue, I'll update you my revenue current stream, and then based on that I'll pay. No, I don't think that is a possibility. Maybe Mayank may have some kind of understanding on that.
Well, as a vendor, we certainly get asked about that all the time. Certainly I have seen that in another service provider or cloud service provider has talked to me about their customers asking for that, an outcome-based model. And personally, I think that this is the pendulum has swung all the way the other way in IT, where people, so maybe before, let's say, Amazon Web Services came along 6 years ago, we were at this end where everything in IT was a CapEx model. You paid everything in advance and you got a return on the investment sometime in the future. Now we're at this end of the spectrum where I don't want to pay for anything until I actually make some money from using that service. I think the pendulum has to come back. There's no way that this is sustainable unless you think about it from, let's look at it from a car perspective. You can buy a car and then use that car on a regular basis. You can take care of that car, you can be efficient in its use, you can be easy on the motor, so on and so forth. Or you have another person who's really hard on the car, and so the car, for those two types of customers, you'll have different usage of the car. Now, think about taking those two customers and putting them into a model of pay as you roll, right? If you're a car rental company, right, what's the model you're going to come up with? Well, the costing model you're going to come up with, or the pricing model you're going to come up with, is going to be for the lowest common denominator. In other words, that customer B that's really hard on the car, right? And that's the pricing model that you're going to come up with. well, why would customer A want to go for such a model, right? When they can be a lot more efficient and it will cost them a lot less if they own the company. I know that was a bit complicated, but hopefully everybody followed me. So I think from an IT perspective, while people are asking for things out here, right, they're either going to be, they're asking for it out here because they haven't actually solved their organizational efficiency issues in the way they consume IT and how efficient they are in terms of consuming IT. And so that's why they want to be out here. But people who have solved some of those issues will never go for that model because it'll be too pricey in the long run for them. So I think what we'll see is, we'll see maybe a spectrum of different business models, but I think we'll tend to see the pendulum come back.
Anyone else want to jump in? I think really where this model is coming from is the whole IT outsourcing industry, where in the beginning it was time and material based, and by the end of it, when the industry matured, it was a mix of an initial capex sort of an deal, and at the end of it, it was around the whole outcome-based model. If they are able to save costs, there the emphasis was, because it was outsourcing, if they are able to save an X amount of money, they will pay a Y amount of money to the service provider. A amount of money or B amount of money goes to the service provider. But here it's about generating revenues. To an extent, from a cloud point of view, it makes sense because they'll be using it more only when they're generating more revenues. But the usage is not directly linked to the revenues. So from a telco point of view, I will maybe want to look out for that. If that model is flexible, maybe Michael has a words around it. But again, coming from a vendor's point of view, I know that it's sometimes it's been asked for. I'm sure he has more experience around it. Telcos are also asking this from vendors. So it's a both end-to-end sort of a view that's coming into the market.
So from my experience perspective, we've been asked a lot by numerous analysts when they do their surveys, their quadrants, their market scale, and so forth, and they were rated pretty badly, if your telco doesn't do a revenue share model. But that was like 2 years ago. Since then, I think the question didn't come out pretty often right now. Because in my experience, I'm not seeing a large enterprise willing to open up their books, their operations, to adopt this model. Because to adopt this model, they need to be transparent on how they do it, from the financial to the operation, and they share it with the telco to make sure that it goes end to end. And I'm not seeing a large enterprise willing to do that with the telco.
Okay, maybe we have one customer we serve, like the revenue model, revenue sharing basis with customer, and then we never want to serve the other customer because we don't know the business, and then that's why I asked you guys. Okay, maybe we start first for the as a service model first before we jump to the sharing model with the customer. Thank you.
Okay. Another question from the audience? Don't be shy. Oh, really? Okay. One topic that I wanted to touch on really quick, we've talked about in a couple other presentations about the concept of customized SLAs for certain types of cloud services. With Gideon, you showed the chart earlier about how different applications have different types of requirements in terms of latency and availability and so on, and that's obviously very important to customers. So in terms of customized SLAs, how do you write those up? What are some examples of that? What are the kinds of tailored requirements that customers ask for when you're setting up a customized SLA with them? And what are the challenges involved with being able to deliver that and live up to those requirements?
Just maybe going back to my definition of the cloud computing, the 5 characteristics that I showed. If it's a true cloud offering, there will be one SLA that will be applicable to everyone. That's a public cloud offering. Same SLAs, maybe there could be different levels of service available, and infrastructure as a service for large enterprises for the core functions, but that will be, let's say, from ERP. But that will be available, the same SLA will be for everyone. Once you get into customization, that's where I as an analyst look at definitions getting very blurred. And it's more about either a hosted environment or a managed environment, or as it's now called a private cloud environment. So when it comes to customization there, it depends on the agreement between the service provider and the end user, depending on the application that has to move in. And yes, for me, that's why I wanted to take the first target and maybe get your inputs on it. For me, that's not really a true cloud sort of an offering. It's more a managed, rebranding of managed or a hosted environment that has been there for the last, since data center hosting has been there. I don't know, maybe I'll keep this open to the audience also, if there are any views on the other side of this and from the panel also, to get your views. Because for me, customized SLAs means a little, it's not a multi-tenant environment. If it's customized for a particular customer.
Okay. Anything? I think if you really okay, you got a consensus here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Mayank is saying in the strict definition of cloud. But if you think about cloud, and put cloud at one end of the spectrum and traditional IT at the other end of the spectrum, there's lots of models between those two. And so whether we call those cloud, managed IT services, whatever, ultimately the service provider, the cloud service provider, has to decide what's the sweet spot for them making money, and how are they differentiating themselves from the competition. And so ultimately, if they believe that their operation is set up, it's automated to the extent that they can offer 100 different tiers of SLA, and that their salespeople can explain those to their customers, then that's fine, right? And obviously it's going to depend on the size of the customer, whether you want to make all of that available, or whether you even want to get into the negotiation of discussing that, because that's going to, of course, the cost of sale is going to impact your profit.
Oh, we have a comment in the back. From NEC, I believe. There you go.
So just listening to Mayank say that the moment you start customizing for a specific customer, it becomes something else, but not public cloud. But if you look at the statement on the slide, it's talking about customer groups, right? So you could create groups where you have a public cloud offering, which is 99% as an example, or 4 hours response time, and then you have different groups around it, right? So I think it's not necessarily about the fact that it breaks down, and what Bernie was talking about is depending on different groups that you create, segmentation that you create of the market, and then look at how do you approach those segments, right? And so that's an observation that I have from that viewpoint. And a lot of companies, even in the public cloud domain, have started doing that, saying that if you reach out to us, for example, only via email, it's a different pricing mechanism versus that. And cloud market is evolving right now. It's in the nascent stages, but eventually I think that's where it will end up as the market starts getting more fragmented. The providers are able to create a niche, that solution that can reach out to that. And the other thought that I had is, we talk about customer-centric approach, but we seem to be focusing more on the product and the offering side, and maybe to a certain extent on the SLA side. But we are completely ignoring how do we communicate to the customer segment with operations. Right? So we can create a good product offering. I think with enough cloud companies out there that have fantastic offerings, but the challenge is how do you communicate that to the different segments that are in. We also seem to be ignoring that to a certain extent.
Maybe we need to respond to the first part first. If you look at the kind of offering the customer, as you mentioned, the service provider will identify where the niche has to be created and provide that offering, maybe from a financial services point of view, or a healthcare cloud point of view, or a particular application that serves a particular need. There are lots of revenue opportunities out there by creating the niche. But from a cloud point of view, the offering or the product remains the same. The customer centricity, as rightly mentioned, comes in from the way you engage the customer. Amazon started off very clearly, you just come to us for an online portal. Now they have different tiers of support. There's another cloud company called Rackspace talking about fanatical customer support as a tagline. So there is a strong demand in how you go ahead and engage customer, how do you talk to them, how do you take their complaints into it, and how do you go ahead and resolve them. But again, coming to the point from a product point of view, the product broadly remains the same. And the second thing that I mentioned in the presentation in the morning, that's where platform as a service comes into the picture. The platform as a service and the APIs that can be created out of it help customers create this level of customization. Taking example of, let's say, ERP and a smaller ERP, which is the NetSuite. They have the Cloud Suite, which allows customers or the IT team to go ahead and build